You're listening to the Gabe Molina Podcast.
Alisa Brzek.
Yes.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm so happy that you're here.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
You're not only were you my neighbor, you're my kettlebell instructor.
Yes.
And what else do you have going on? Tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do for a living.
Well, I am a licensed professional counselor. In order to do that in the state of Texas, you have to have a master's degree in counseling. You have to do 3,000 hours of supervised counseling, and then you become what we call fully licensed. So I became fully licensed, and currently I have a private practice in Garden Ridge, Texas. And my primary population is first responders, military members, civilians with trauma. So trauma is really my that's my bag, right? I love trauma, and really the worse, the more I like it, which sounds strange, but I really enjoy helping people with this really serious, severe events in their life.
Yeah. So when you say trauma, what does that encompass exactly? I mean, I guess when we hear about first responders and stuff and military, it's kind of, it's easy to kind of, I guess, wrap your mind around what kind of trauma they'd have been through. But
Sure.
As far as like your regular Joe Blow off the street, what kind of trauma are they experiencing?
Sure. Like a perfect example going on right now would be Uvalde, the shooting in Uvalde. So a teacher that had to witness kids die, the people in the hospital where the children were being brought in, adults being brought in, and people that had to witness that sort of thing. So that would be an example of trauma. Child abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, rape, murder, suicide, people that experience loved ones or
Sure.
know somebody that died by suicide, things like that. Just anything that you think is anything that you might hear and say, "Oh, wow, that's really overwhelming." Yeah, that's what people come to me for.
So how do you even begin a session with somebody like that? You know, untrained, but I like to think I know everything. But I don't even know how you open the door to getting somebody to open up.
Yeah.
Do you typically, when people come to see you, are they already ready to open up? Or is it still an effort to get them to even begin to open up?
Well, typically when people come to me, it's like they are ready, right? They are having a lot of problems in their life. They're having behavioral problems. They're having symptoms that keep them from having really positive relationships, or they're having difficulty at work. They might have suicidal ideations. I mean, be depressed, anxious, have nightmares, all sorts of things. They're like, I can't deal with this life anymore that I have, and so I need to get some help. And that brings them in the door. And then, of course, all therapy, no matter what I'm doing, I'm going to sit down with somebody and say, hi. And we talk about informed consent, and we talk about confidentiality. And then I've also already talked to them on the phone. Like nobody comes in cold off the street. So they contact me, and then we talk on the phone a little bit about what's going on in their life. And then they come in, and then I get to know them, right? We build rapport. Relationship is the most important thing in any kind of counseling. We could do all kinds of modalities of counseling, but relationship, the therapeutic alliance, that's what makes counseling successful. So I trust you, you trust me, and we're able to talk about whatever your issue is without judgment, without fear. And through that relationship, that's where people are able to say, these are the things that happened to me, or these are the things I did.
So somebody like, I've never been in therapy. For somebody who's never been in therapy, what can they expect coming in to see you for the first time?
Well, they would, just what I said, they would come in, and then I might say, hey, how are you doing? I'm glad you're here. Of course, we talked on the phone a little bit, and I don't know, sometimes people are nervous, and I might say, hey, are you feel nervous or anxious? And they would say, yeah, of course. Most people are nervous unless they've, been to therapists many times. And I might say, isn't it the most interesting thing, therapy? It's like, hi, I don't know you, but come in and tell me every secret and hopes and dreams and all the things that you've done, and you don't know me, go. And then they laugh, and, we laugh, and then we say, okay, and then we go on from there. It's a very kind of organic process. It's different for everybody. So
I think that's where a lot of people, I know for me, it's kind of, I always feel like I know my problems. I just need to get to the answer, or maybe I'm too lazy to get to the answer.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, and I feel less like this as I've gotten older, but I think a lot of times the thought is, or the feeling is, how is somebody who has no clue anything about me going to help me?
Yes. And so, but I get to know you, right? So I get to know the person. And that's the interesting thing about, in a society that's very pill driven, right? And I'm not against medication for people. If people want to take medication, it's appropriate for them, it's great. But what people want is a pill and then for stuff to go away. And it's not how it works. It's kind of like, I get a surgery so I can stop eating, those sorts of surgeries or whatever. Again, if people want to do that, that's cool. But here's the thing, therapy is a process. And that's what I tell people. I say, it's not like the medical community where we're like, in 12 easy sessions, we'll fix all your stuff. If we can, well, that'd be amazing. But, or we help to heal you, but that's not generally the case. And so I tell people, when you have, chronic severe trauma, plan on being in my office for a year. Maybe more. If you're not, and it's sooner, great, because I don't want to keep you here any longer than you need to be.
So I guess, let's say somebody comes into your office, they see you for a year, and they progress to a point where they don't need to see you as often. Mm-hmm. Is it ever to a point where they never need to see you again?
No. I have people all the time that have been with me for however long. And typically what happens is they come in weekly. And then pretty soon we go, you're doing really good. And there's an agreement on both sides. And then they go maybe twice a month, and then maybe once. Now we're on maintenance, and then it's like, okay, I'm really good. I feel very confident, and I'm done. Great, okay. And it might be 2 months later. It might be a year later. Hey, Alisa, do you have a slot? Do you have availability because X, Y, Z? Yeah, come on.
So then, just me being somebody who doesn't know much about this kind of thing, I kind of almost, as you're talking about it, I'm thinking about somebody who has a drug addiction or an alcohol addiction, and it's not something that ever goes away. You always hear those folks say, "I'm always an addict forever."
Sure.
They'll say they've been in recovery for 36 years, or they haven't had a drink in 36 years, and so I guess it's something similar to that. It's something that you can't expect it to be gone forever, but you give them tools to cope with it, I guess.
Oh, certainly. That's the main thing in therapy, I think, is that besides processing through trauma, also to give somebody coping skills, strategies for self-care, etc. But it doesn't even have to be substance abuse, right? It could be like, let's say someone dies, and then they're just not processing it well. They could be perfectly happy otherwise, doing great otherwise, and then this happens, and boom, it just rocks them on their heels, and they need to come in and process it. So it's all kinds of reasons.
That's kind of one thing that I wanted to talk to you about and I don't know if it's something that is just more prevalent now, or it has mental health always been an issue? Has it increased? I feel like it's increased. And I don't know what the cause of that is. I think it's probably a multi-pronged issue that makes people have mental health issues. But what do you see as far as an increase of people with mental health since you started, or since you even started taking classes and learning or whatever?
Sure.
Has it increased dramatically, or has it been pretty consistent?
Well, I think that people have always, since the dawn of time, had mental health concerns. And then, of course, with media, the age of media and et cetera, it becomes a lot more obvious, right? We're coming into an age, too, where therapy is a little more normalized, which is great because we really need that, right? Nobody says to somebody, just get over your cancer, right? Just get over your leukemia, right? If we encourage people to go get help for that. And we're starting to do that with mental health, which is great. I think that the pandemic rocked people in a way that they weren't expecting, because there's various online places where you can find therapists. Psychology Today is...
I've seen that more and more.
Yes. So you see that when you look for them, there's a lot of help, which is great. So like Psychology Today. And it used to be you'd go through Psychology Today and you'd be looking through all the therapists, and you would find, I like this therapist. Oh, they're not taking any new clients. But there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people to choose from. Now when you look, it's like not taking new, right? I've never seen it. And I think a lot of that happened when everybody had to isolate, which is never good for anybody. There were financial issues. People that weren't used to being together all the time were now stuck all the time with each other, right? And
even though you were married to them.
Yes. Yeah. You weren't with them every single day.
It's strange. It sounds funny to say that, but it's strange because it's like, it's me and Nina, right? We're in the house For us, it was a matter of like 2 weeks, I think, is when I worked from home.
Yeah.
And then went back to the office.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like, this is the person you chose to be with. This is your wife, you know. But to be with them 24 hours a day, every day.
It's different, yeah.
It's very different, you know. And it's funny because like I'm one of those people I like my alone time.
Yeah, me too.
But I guess as human beings, we need that interaction with each other.
We do.
And not having it was probably more difficult for other people. I rather enjoyed it. But I can see how that was complicated. And you know, one thing that concerns me is like you know, I've got nephews that are younger and they're, you know, late teens, early 20s. And when you think about it, the past, I don't know, since 2009, so we're probably looking at 3 years. And even before that, I feel like we've been constantly bombarded with one crisis after another.
Yes.
You know, so for a young person who's maybe 18 right now, you know, and was 15 when Corona got super popular.
Yes.
You know, it's like it's been a crisis after a crisis after a crisis.
Yes.
So what does that do to a person, especially somebody who's still developing mentally? And what kind of things can parents look for to, you know, to see when their kid's depressed or see when their kid is, you know, teetering on being somewhat suicidal or just depressed.
Well, I think, you know, media is so, you know, it's always been in our lives, right? But it's all the time. It's 24/7. It's people are on the news, you know, people are on social media, and social media is just such, I'm not a super fan of it, right? There are some good things about social media, certainly, like you can stay connected with people and there are groups to be a part of, and that's all great. But the negativity on social media, the bullying, the ugliness, the you know, the normalizing of you have to look a certain way to be attractive or whatever, I just think it's really, it's not healthy. It's certainly not healthy. And so a lot of kids are having, you know, suicidal ideations. They're questioning who they are. Do they do the right thing? I mean, we all were teenagers, right? And it was hard enough. We didn't have social media when I was a kid.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah. And so, you know, you could escape from that, right? You could go home and have a place that was safe, you could just get away, right? And now you can't get away. It's just so prevalent. And so kids that are showing anything that's out of the norm, right? If my kid comes home and they're always happy and now they're not, they're down, you know, they're sad, they're isolating, they are, they don't want to eat like they used to, or they're eating too much, or they're sleeping too much, or sleeping too little, or just anything that's out of the norm. You know, parents know their kids if they're really tuned in and paying attention. And so parents know, you know, they'll look at them and say, are you okay? What's going on with you? And really being involved with what's on their social media, what's in their room, you know, I think parents need to be a little bit nosy. And that's my opinion. I don't have kids.
Sure.
My husband and I don't have kids on purpose because we wish all the best for the children of the world, but we don't want them ourselves.
Yeah.
But if we were parents, we would definitely be, I think, very involved with what they were doing and who their friends were, where they're going, who are they talking to, what's in their text messages. And that can seem overly intrusive, but it can also show you a pattern that might be concerning.
And I think that's one thing that's important for people to understand is I think most folks have an idea in their mind of what depression looks like.
Yes.
And they're missing 60% of the other signs.
Very true. Yeah, depression doesn't look like the same thing in one person. You know, you can look at somebody else and think, you know, they look completely happy and they're not. That's a face that they're putting on. They found a way to cope and get through their day until they can get back to their bed or whatever they're doing that's maladaptive, that's not healthy for them. And we don't know until we ask people. Yeah. You know, that's why connectivity, that's the way I think we were made, right? We were made to connect with each other. We were made to say, are you okay? This is what I need. You know, you have something I have, I don't have, I have something you don't have, right? We come together and we become complementary. And I think that if we were more in people's business, right, I think that might be helpful. Like we go into our garages, not us, we tend to know, you know, you and I, we know our neighbors, but a lot of people don't. They go into their garages and have no idea who lives next door to them. And I think that if we can be more involved with people, put ourselves out there a little bit to help people, that we can be a lot healthier as a society.
And I guess in that, through Corona, being isolated, being locked up in the house, being
yes.
Having the suggestion of, hey, stay away from people.
Yes.
I mean, that's the complete opposite of what you're saying to do
completely
now.
so negative, right? And so
Yeah.
a lot of anxiety spike, a lot of depression spike, a lot of more suicidal ideations. You know, suicide itself is not as high as you think it is, but suicidal ideations, people that contemplate suicide, that's in the millions. And so that certainly increased when we weren't connected. You know, if you look at other cultures, take an Asian culture, right? You know, people of color, they tend to be, and I don't want to generalize, but they tend to be, but I guess I am gonna more together, right? Like the parents live with the families. They provide for each other. They're there for each other. Whereas that's not necessarily the case in America. And you have parents or grandparents that have been, you know, they haven't seen anybody in months. So isolative behaviors are just not healthy for us at all.
Yeah.
And I don't mean me time, right? Me time or by myself time, that's different.
Yeah.
That's when I go do my own thing. I kind of restore myself a little bit, and then I come back. That's a healthy thing.
Yeah.
But being lonely, that is a very dangerous place to be.
So what are some signs that people can look for in somebody who's have suicidal thoughts? The reason I ask is it seems to be happening more and more often, right? And when I was younger, as I get older, I kind of reevaluate my thoughts and what I believe in. And when I was younger, I was like, I always felt like, you know, somebody who did something that whoever committed suicide, that was. I always felt like it was something that was 100% preventative if somebody had intervened. And sometimes nowadays I see people committing suicide, and I could be wrong, but I see that people have committed suicide and it was immediately after something that was happy or a conversation they had with somebody that was good, you know? And so it starts to make me wonder if maybe there's something else going on in the brain or in the mind that isn't necessarily, hey, I'm not doing well, you know, I don't have my kids or I'm broke, and, you know, these are all reasons for me to take my life. So maybe now I kind of view it as something else is happening there, and I don't know what that is. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. So first of all, I think that we need to start changing the language around suicide, and let's stop saying committing suicide, right? Because committing comes from this old, it's very kind of comes from religion, right? With we commit adultery, we commit murder, we commit suicide, right? It's a sin to commit suicide. So it's better to change kind of the language. It's helpful to change the language around that to say someone died by suicide or is a suicide death, right? Because of the millions of people that are thinking about it. You know, we don't want to normalize suicide because that's not a good thing, but we also want to leave the door open so that people don't feel shamed about those thoughts, because those thoughts are more normal than we think. And so there's a lot going on with somebody. You know, you hear the old adage that, you know, suicide is selfish, right? And that's couldn't be further from the truth. You know, the person that's left behind feels if there's someone that does die by suicide, the person that's left behind feels very sad, very lonely, maybe very angry, maybe guilty, like I could have done something to stop that or whatever, right? If I would have done this, then this wouldn't have happened. If I would have done that, that wouldn't have happened. I'm just looking at the camera. Yeah, it looks like
something happened.
Yeah, something did happen. I don't know what's happening with your camera, but
this might have just turned into full audio.
It went, and that's fine too, right? Whatever. And so here's the thing: there is a lot going on, because someone that has something going on, they feel completely hopeless. They feel like worthless. They feel like things can't get better. They have a very small sight picture. They don't have coping skills. They're not like you and I, where we have a problem and we say, okay, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And if that doesn't work, we're going to do 1, 2, 3, right? They may not have a lot of coping skills. They may have a substance issue. They have a lot of things that are working against them. And really, when somebody gets that hopeless and worthless, they also may have, they have very disordered thinking. Some people reported command hallucinations that just kill yourself, right? It'll be so much better. People also feel like I won't be a burden anymore. I'm a burden. And so they're actually thinking about the other people that they're leaving behind, that they're doing something good for them. And so it's much more complicated than what a common, untrained person thinks. It's a lot more complicated than that. So making statements like, well, they were selfish, or why couldn't they figure it out? That's ignorance, not stupidity, ignorance. You don't know any better. You're not trained. And so what we need to do is we need to, again, the same thing with the kid, connect with people. Connect with people and let them know you're important, you're loved, you matter. If there's something going on, let's talk about it, because we don't do that in our society, right? We've been brought up with a lot of parents who say, get over it, suck it up, you're going to be fine, it's not that big of a deal, right? And that's what, and then so people are like, okay, this is not a place for me to be able to express what's going on with me, or what I need, or what I don't like, or this is really hard for me. And man, comparison is a huge thing too, right? You have all this big, horrible stuff going on, and I just have this little tiny thing going on, and so I don't want to say anything. That's super ineffective. I tell people all the time, if you have a gunshot wound and I have a knife wound, and I say, well, you have a gunshot wound, so I'm not going to do anything about my knife wound. Well, my knife wound festers and I can die. So we need to stop comparing. People compare trauma all the time. And that's not effective or helpful.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot, is people comparing trauma.
Yeah,
we have people that we know that have committed suicide in the past.
Died by suicide.
Uh-huh. You're gonna have to correct me a lot, because I'm like everybody else. That's a phrase, I guess it's ingrained in speech. Mm-hmm. But they died by suicide, mm-hmm. And again, I'm ignorant, so I'll tell you right now, I'm ignorant. But sometimes I feel like if they could have waited one more day, or if they could have waited one more hour.
That's what we wish for, right? Which we wish for, because because it's such a loss, right? We're like, my gosh, this person, and everybody's so important to the world, and people don't realize how important they are. I tell people, like, you matter. If you're not here, people are affected by that, and we don't know how your life here affects so many other people. Yeah. So it's sad.
So when let's say somebody is experiencing those thoughts, mm-hmm. what is the best course of action for them to take? Is there something they can do themselves, mm-hmm. to kind of help themselves maybe make it through that low mm-hmm. part, mm-hmm. or is it something where they need to seek help right away?
Well, one of the things that's great is we have a national suicide hotline, right, which is a 1-800-273-TALK. And so you can call that anytime, 24/7. So, maybe you don't want to tell a friend or a loved one because you're afraid of judgment or...
And is that anonymous?
Yeah, that's anonymous. And so you get to call, and you've got someone on the other end that's trained, that wants to be there, that is there to help you. And so that may be enough for you to not hurt yourself, harm yourself, kill yourself, and then go get some help. Go seek somebody. Go seek a licensed professional counselor or a psychologist or a social worker. We all kind of do not the same, but we all kind of are all similar. Go find somebody, go connect with somebody. And you may go to a therapy session the first time and you may not click with that person. That's okay. Tell them, you're not for me. Go to the next person. Mm-hmm. Find somebody that you can connect with. Find somebody that you can feel heard by, feel seen by, feel understood by, and then do some work around that and figure out why you feel that way and find some positive coping skills.
I'm glad you said that, because I think that happens for a lot of people, in the sense that, that they go to a therapy session with a therapist, and all of a sudden they don't think therapy's for them because they didn't jive with that person.
Right.
And it's like, well, no, not necessarily. It's just that person. Go find another one. And you may have to go to 4 or 5 of them before you find the one that clicks with you.
100%. Because therapists, I think, unknowingly do some harm to people. That's not their intention, and they may do some harm, and then people say, oh, that didn't help me, that was a waste of time, or that person hurt me, right? That person shamed me, that person made me feel uncomfortable, that person, I have people tell me that. Not all the time. I have a lot of people that come to me and say, man, my therapist helped me so much, and I had some time, but now I need help with this. But I also conversely have had people come and say, man, therapy was a complete waste of my time, or they made me feel bad, yeah.
I bet it's difficult to get somebody back in a quote unquote therapist chair when they've had an experience like that, because they're mm-hmm. opening themselves up completely.
Yes.
You literally are opening yourself up completely to somebody.
You are.
And to have it be a negative experience, which is unfortunate, but it may happen. Mm-hmm. It's going to be difficult to get them back in there. And that's Oh, that's
It's a
tough.
travesty. It's really, really bad. But what happens a lot of times though is that word of mouth is so powerful, and so I have most of my clientele come from referrals. And so people may have a bad experience, but then one of my clients says, "My therapist is the best. You totally need to go and see her." And then they come and see me, and then I'm able to repair that what happened with another therapist.
I got you. And do you ever? I guess when something like that happens, is there any sort of communication between therapists to say, "Hey, two people have come to me from you and you have a conversation like that?" Because I would imagine that's toxic to have a bad therapist.
Well, and here's the thing, bad therapist, who determines that, right? Because this person, that may just be their experience where 500 other people went to that therapist and had a brilliant experience.
Yeah, that's true.
So no, of course I would never do that. The only time I would do that is if, let's say a client came to me and said, "Hey, I've had sex with my therapist." That is not...
See, that might be the therapist I went to.
That is not okay. It's unethical.
Yeah.
And I would report that therapist.
Yeah.
Because that is massively harmful. But if somebody came to me and say, "Hey, my therapist said this or that or made me feel this way," I kind of have to take, that's a one side. Because if I were to talk to the therapist, they may say, "I did say that, but I said that because of X, Y, and Z," and it might make total sense to me. And so I listen to the client and validate what they said. "I'm sorry you experienced that. What would be better for you, right? What would have been a better way to say that to you? How can I help you in this instance?" That sort of thing. So I'll heal that because it's so interesting. The therapeutic alliance is a relationship that will reflect into other relationships in the client's world. So the client, when they come in with me and I'm understanding to them, I'm non-judgmental to them, but I'm also authentic with them. I might say to them, "That doesn't make any sense." Or I might be like, "That's dumbass stuff you just did," right? I'm very authentic as a therapist. And clients love that. They all say that they really like that. Not that I'm for everybody. Some people, some people are not going to like that and they're going to go to somebody else.
Well, I mean, in those conversations, you want somebody who you don't. I would imagine you wouldn't want a stagnant conversation. You don't want to feel like you're in the doctor's office in one of those open backed gowns, right?
Right.
You want to.
Right.
It's a comfortable conversation that you want to be able to have with somebody because you're talking about things that are deeply inside of you and that you're trying to get out and trying to figure out and trying to work through. And I don't think being in a stale environment will do that for a person.
No, you want it to be back and forth, even if it's very, very uncomfortable, right? Somebody's telling me about their childhood rape, right? Like we need to be comfortable enough to be able to talk about that. Yeah, it's very, and so then as they build confidence in the therapeutic alliance, then they go out into the world with more confidence in their other relationships.
I feel like you have some heavy conversations,
Yeah.
And I don't. For me, I feel like I carry a lot of people's sorrow at times.
Yeah.
I haven't done it in a while. I need to do some more, but I was doing like the Los Peleoneros shirts and caps, and I would try and donate money to sick people, and you start losing people.
Yeah.
And it's heavy, super heavy. When I think about the job that you do, I think about the weight of the conversations that y'all must have. But I'd imagine that when there's a breakthrough or when there's something that you do or a conversation that you have that you help somebody get to the other side of those emotions and those feelings and those thoughts, that's got to be some of the highest highs to be able to help somebody get through something like that.
It's just incredible. It's incredible to see, an adult, let's say a 40-year-old, whatever it is, right, that has carried this core belief about themselves that they are worthless and they are no good. And when you carry those core beliefs, that bleeds into all parts of your life. And to where they can then, when all the work is done, say, "I'm lovable, I'm worthy, I'm important, and I matter in this world." My God, that's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
100% why I do what I do.
It's funny because like these kinds of conversations, they kind of open my eyes to a lot of stuff because I always joke, but I'm always kind of serious.
Yeah.
And I have way too much self-esteem, So when I hear you say that, it makes me think about the type of person that would feel that way. There's got to be a bunch of them, but I don't understand that thought process. And that doesn't mean anything, right? It doesn't mean that somebody's doing things right or somebody's doing things wrong.
Correct.
It's just I don't understand those thoughts, right? And so I always feel like I'm a helpful person and I'm a helpful guy. But the more that I see, whether it's drug addiction or it's mental health issues, and I see it happening around people that I care about and the people around me, I feel helpless, right? Yeah. Because it's like I don't even know how to approach somebody who's experiencing that. I don't even know what, me, the first thing out of my mouth typically is something idiotic, and I always think that's part of my charm. And I think that's part of my...
I think it is. I think it is.
I think that's part of my helping people, right? And this is just me being stupid, is I feel like when I come across and I show you how dumb things can be, I feel like sometimes people look at that and every now and then they'll go, hey, life's not that complicated and it can be a little bit silly. But as I get older and I see this happening to people closer to me, whether it's suicide or it's mental health issues, it makes me less confident in my typical tactics of relating to people.
Yeah, but here's what I'll say. The way we see ourselves is different than the way people see ourselves, which is what it's supposed to be. The way I see myself is different than the way you see me. And so what I know about you is that you're a very kind, loving, and open person.
Handsome.
You're quick to say, I love you. You're quick to say if you need anything, and you actually mean it, right? And so you actually have a lot more going for you in that than you realize. People feel not judged. They don't feel judged around you.
Yeah, I could see that. Because I try not... I used to be super judgmental, and I still am to some degree.
Everybody is.
But I try and... Like I said, as you get older, you're not the person you were when you were younger.
Right, of course.
Right? And I think that's another thing that people struggle with, is people hold themselves accountable for things that they did when they were young.
Oh, yes.
And it's funny because I used to do that too. And now I'm 45, and it's like, I can't take responsibility for when I was 20. I was an idiot. I didn't know anything about life. I didn't do anything that required me to really have to apologize to anybody. I didn't do anything that negative, but I was an idiot back then.
Well, we can take accountability, but we can say, I was doing the best I could,
yeah.
Right? You didn't wake up in the morning and say, watch this shit show, right? Or watch me screw people's lives. You didn't do that, right? You just kind of woke up.
No, you're right. There was a couple of conversations. Maybe.
You woke up and tried to do the best you can. And so one of the things I like to teach people is I love the words effective and ineffective, right? Instead of saying that was bad or good, right or wrong, I like to say, was that effective? Was that behavior effective? Was that choice effective? Or was that ineffective? And I think that takes some of the judgment out of it. And that teaches us to say that was ineffective, and then I can move on and make better decisions in the future.
And I think it's okay for people to allow themselves to move on from the screw-ups that they made when they were younger. A lot of people have a hard time letting that go.
Yes, one of the reasons they see me.
So what are some of the, right now, I guess, the folks that you see, what is there a high volume of? Is it people who are suicidal, or is it just people trying to cope with childhood issues, or is it the military folks that have been in deployment and have come back?
Yeah, it's such a wide range of. There's a lot of childhood. Not just abuse, but it could also be the messages that they heard in childhood, the things that they, because if you're a kid, and even if nobody struck you, say you have an alcoholic parent. So now you have a chaotic, kind of scary environment, because is this person going to come home drunk, screaming and breaking things, and is going to hit my other parent? So they grew up with that. Even maybe no one said anything to them. Maybe they were ignored, or maybe they were, beat to death every day. Maybe they were sexually abused, so there's a lot of that I work with. I work with a lot of, say, police officers. Police officers see a lot of different things, and they go from call to call to call to call. And generally, they won't go see their on-staff psychologists, therapists, etc. They won't do that because they're afraid that information will affect their career. And so they have all these, say they've been in the police force for 20 years, and now they're having problems in their relationship, and they drink too much to deal with their stuff. And they have, 20 years of dead kids. I had to shoot somebody. I almost got killed. Those sorts of things, right? And so now we're going to process through all those experiences. And so they can have, so currently they can decrease or eliminate any depression, anxiety, PTSD, symptomology, negative experiences, negative relationships, things like that. So I see so many different things. I don't think I see like one thing. I see people in the military that have gone downrange and they've had to shoot women and children, right? Because those people were coming at them with they were going to kill them, or they were going to kill somebody in their squad or flight or whatever it is. And so I just see all sorts of things. I never see, if I see 6 people a day, 8 people a day, I never see the same thing. It's never boring.
That's heavy.
That's so heavy. What is funny is it is heavy and it is exhausting, and that's why all therapist types, which I kind of categorize everybody, right? That's why we have to take care of ourselves. We have to have downtime, alone time, restorative things, whatever your thing is, like exercise, walking, massages, a pedicure, talking to other people, processing things out. And having a good social support system, right? Of course, I have my husband, who is a great support to me, friends. My husband's over there going, "Oh,
he's
so
crying.
sweet."
He's crying right now.
And that's super important in your life, because I can't do what I do without all that support. Because when I come home, I'm drained. Sometimes I say the wrong words when I come home, like I don't make sense. And it's like, it's therapy brain, and I need good sleep and all those things. And then I get back and I love it.
So does it help you? Do you see a therapist? Does it help you have therapy?
I don't personally. I have in the past. Many therapists see therapists, which is great. Would it benefit me? Sure. It's another thing to fit in, just to process what I hear, right? But talking to friends, talking to my husband, of course, I don't tell my friends or my husband personal details about therapy, but just telling like what it's, how I'm feeling and what's going on with me and the stressors from that. It certainly helps me feel supported.
And you said the exercise as well.
Oh, gotta have exercise. Everybody should have exercise. Every living person on this planet should have some sort of exercise, because what we do is we stir up those positive chemicals in the brain. One of the best things for depression is exercise. And it doesn't have to be CrossFit, right? Go take a walk. Go get on a bike. Go do something where you move and stir up some of those chemicals in your brain, and you'll feel a lot better.
So I guess in addition to like what we talked earlier, when somebody's feeling depressed or somebody's feeling, they have suicidal thoughts, in addition to being able to surround themselves with loved ones and have conversations, getting that exercise and getting those endorphins.
Getting good exercise, watching what kind of food you eat. Our stomach is our second brain. Our gut is our second brain. And so
I think it's my first. And he's dumb as hell. It's terrible.
So the crap that we're putting in is also feeding depression, right? And the tricky part is that with depression, it's like, you get in this circle, right? I'm depressed. If I would exercise, I would feel less depressed, but I'm so depressed I can't exercise. And so it's not as black and white. But yes, if we can get a lot of coping skills on board and a lot of ideas, then if we can try a few of those things, and especially exercise, that can be very helpful.
Let me ask you this: I've got people who have people who have died by suicide.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. There you go.
All right. What, as a friend and family member to these people, what is something that needs to be conveyed to the survivors?
Yeah.
To people that have taken that have died by suicide.
Yeah.
What is something that they need to understand about the process of what happened, and because they take the blame.
Oh yes.
They carry it, and it's heavy, and now the cycle of depression's just it's gone to somebody else.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everybody's got a little bit of depression. They've got things that they get depressed about.
Sure.
And then to take that on, it's easy to say, hey, you did everything you could, but a lot of times, I guess when they're in the heat of the act that took place, it doesn't feel that way.
So I think it's really helpful to go see a professional because we have grief and loss, right? And grief and loss is a lot of things. We could lose somebody by death by suicide. Losing a job can be grief and loss. Losing a relationship, losing a child, losing a pet, all those things are grief and loss. And what people tell you is to get over it, right? It's been a year. Aren't you done with that yet? No, grief and loss can stay with you your whole life.
Sure.
But it looks different. One week it's really strong and the next week it's not as heavy. And so the first thing I would say to those people is it's not your fault. It is not your fault, right? I have a client whose son died by suicide, and she still says, if I would have, right? If I would have done this and I would have done that. And I have to say, wrong. You could not, there's nothing that you can do or not do which keeps people alive. We do the best we can as human beings, and it's not your fault. And so, we look at the grief cycle, right? Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, right? And so we tend to go through that cycle. And a lot of people, that's what's called bargaining, right? If I would have said this or said that, if I wouldn't have done this or done that, none of that is true, right? It turned out the way it did because that's the way it turned out. And so you need to process your grief. You need to process your guilt. You need to process your loss and know that your loved one. So for me, I'm a Christian, and I believe that, we go on to something much better than this. And so they are now at peace. And you're not. And so this is about working on what's going on with you.
Mm. Mr. Brown's 89, Nina's dad. Mm-hmm. So I can talk about him because he'll never listen to my podcast. He loves me. I'm not going to say that. But, Mr. Brown has a lot of survivors of remorse from Korea and Vietnam.
Yes.
And he's 89, mm-hmm. and he's been looking he needs to renew his driver's license. 89, still drives. Wow. And so he couldn't find his birth certificate. So he's been going through a lot of paperwork and documents, and I think a lot of that stirs up memories. Years ago we were watching basketball, and he talked to me about things that he experienced, and Nina will say he's got survivor's remorse. Mm-hmm. Even at 89. Yeah. And granted, therapy would probably help him. Mm-hmm. He's 89 and he loves to garden. Mm-hmm. It's the other aspects of his life are very well put together. Mm-hmm. He takes care of himself. He exercises. He mows the yard, I think, every other day. He eats well. He goes for walks. He's got his dogs, and they're very well taken care of. And so he doesn't have any gaps, I guess, in his life right now. I mean, he lost his wife and whatnot, but he's filled that with other things, mm-hmm. So he's busy. But there's got to be a lot of those guys out there with survivor's remorse. And I've talked to my buddy Benny. He's the same way. They've just experienced things that most people haven't. Right. And I think even talking with Benny, therapy helped Benny. Good. And I think a lot of folks that are, I guess, kind of poo-poo the therapy portion. Mm-hmm. I really wish they would try it. Oh yeah. I've always been therapy, whatever, man up, right? Yeah. Yes. But again, as I get older, mm-hmm. and granted, it isn't something that I didn't experience what these gentlemen and mm-hmm. women have, and I haven't had to live through the things that they did. But in talking to people who've been through therapy, they're happy that they did it. Oh, yeah. And so I hope that they seek that when they need it, mm-hmm. And it isn't something that they have to use all the time, the therapy sessions. But, it's just scary that, even in the conversations that I had with Mr. Brown, having them with him, while he's having them, you could tell he was still heartbroken, even in his 80s. Oh, yeah. And so absolutely. And so there's this concept, Bessel van der Kolk, and he wrote a book called, I'm sure many books, but The Body Keeps the Score, right? And so what we do is when we store trauma, but not only the brain, but it's stored in the body as well, and in our emotions. And so, when somebody describes a trauma and then they have many thoughts about that, they have a lot of negative body sensations, crying, those sorts of things. And so that's an indication that they need some reprocessing of that trauma, talking through that trauma with somebody who is trained. I do something, my modality of therapy is EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And what it is it's applying bilateral stimulation. So if you've seen like a light bar where you watch, the light go back and forth, or you have hand paddles and the hand paddles are buzzing in between. And so what that means is, say somebody, Joe died and
because I didn't save Joe, right, in Vietnam. And that makes me a failure, right? And so what EMDR would change that to is, by the client's words, let's say, after we do the bilateral stimulation and after we do a lot of things, right? Like, I'm sad that Joe died, but that wasn't my fault. And I'm a survivor, right? That's what therapy will do for somebody. And so the sadness doesn't go away that because Joe died, but it's not my fault. And I did the best I could, right? That's a lot more positive way to look at it. But when you don't have that help, right? Or you don't have even yourself listening to Mr. Brown, that's a help, right? He's processing with you and you are hearing him and you are validating him and you're saying, yeah, that's really hard. I'm glad that you made it back. I'm sorry that they didn't, but I'm glad you made it back. And it sounds like you did the best you could, right? That is healing right there. And that's very helpful. When we say man up, that is very unhelpful.
Well, I guess I missed the boat on that conversation with him too, because it was more of all I could do was listen. A lot of times I've had a very, compared to most, cupcake life, right? I've had both parents. Well, which is crazy to say,
right?
When you say I was
it's
real lucky, I had a mom and a
Yep.
dad. That's so stupid to have to say that. But my dad was doing a lot better in his life when I came around, and I tell people it's because I came around. But so it's hard for me to connect with a Mr. Brown.
Sure.
All I can do is listen, and I don't even feel like I can say a word to him because I don't have any of those, even near what you had as an experience, So I feel like all I can be is an ear at when something like that happens. It doesn't happen very often.
But that's very powerful. That is very, very powerful because most people in this society are too busy to even sit and listen to anybody. So to have somebody's undivided attention it's a blessing.
So then I am the shit then.
You're something all right, Gabe.
One thing that I guess it's an elephant in the room is the shooting in Uvalde this weekend, or this past week, and people get into the debates, the mental health, the gun issues, and I was talking to a buddy at work, and it's kind of like for somebody to be able to be in a room with a frightened child, max fear in that kid, and still shoot that child. That dude's fucked in the head. And not to say that maybe at some point in his life he started therapy sessions early that would eventually prevent that. But it's like when somebody's at that point, all you can really do in my ignorant opinion, all you can do is turn that guy off, right? And it's like I would like to see us get to a point where we have more secure schools. Yeah. I would love to see more security around that, but more. And I don't know, I haven't been to school in forever, but I'd imagine they need to be able to have more mental health, I don't know if it's classes, maybe therapy sessions in-house, have more of that availability because that starts early. I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to name names and get people in trouble, but I know of children who have mental health issues, some of them psychotic, and at a young age, and things get ignored and passed on by the public school system. They're aware of them, but instead of attacking that issue early, they need a year and a half of data. They push the kid on to the next class. And it's like at some point, that could have been addressed very early on.
Oh, yeah.
They know the issues on some of these kids. They know the issues on some of these kids early. And from the information that I get from the source that I get it from, it's not addressed. It's not addressed as early as it could be. It's almost like it needs to become a problem before we can do something about it.
Yeah,
And
it's
that's
very,
unfortunate.
it's a super complicated issue, right? It's a very complicated issue because we have kids that have, like you say, they have some mental health concerns. Maybe they had abuse at home. Maybe, there's the whole nature versus nurture. Do people come out of the womb and they just have issues, or is it based on their upbringing or things that happen to them? It's very complicated. And then you have teachers who are underpaid, overworked, have too many kids in their classroom, and they're doing the absolute best that they can. And right, kids do get passed on. Kids get passed on with grades, or they say, this is the parents should be dealing with this, and maybe the parents are. I know parents that see me and their kids have been in therapy forever, and their kids are still having difficulty. I don't think there's any right answer. The more education we have, the better. The more programs we have, the better. There are school counselors. School counselors exist in schools to help kids, and the more people involved, the better. But even with that said, there are parents that do everything they can, and kids still choose to do what they do. Mm-hmm. The Uvalde shooter, I don't know enough about him. We need to be very careful when we say things like, that was a mental health issue. We don't know that because there are probably 50% of the population that have mental health issues that never pick up a gun and that would never do such a thing. And so we don't know what actually is going on with this person. And so it's better to say, I don't know, right? It's better because I don't know. I don't know this person's background. I don't know what happened to this person. I don't know what's happening that day. And so this can be a person with no mental health issues, and they decide to go kill people because of whatever. I don't know what the reason is. We're quick to go on social media. We're quick to pass things around. We're quick to say this is why, and we don't actually know. We're not there. A really good example, I just really like it because it's so big in the news right now, is Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, right? That's a very interesting trial. And the clinician that went on the stand and diagnosed Amber Heard with borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder, those are disorders that come from a disordered life, right? Come from chaos, come from problems in childhood. So when I look at Amber Heard, I'm interested, right? I don't look at her and say, wow, what a crazy, horrible person she is. I mean, did she do and say some things that were not effective? Yes. And unhealthy? Absolutely. But people like that, there's a reason that they're doing the things that they do, because maladaptive coping skills. They've tried to find a way to cope. And so this shooter, I don't know why he did what he did, and we need more education, and we just need a lot more help.
Yeah, I tell somebody that I know all the time, and this is me just talking out of my ass because I have no credentials. I'm just a guy that sits in a cubicle all day and thinks about stuff. But I almost feel, and this is idiotic, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I almost feel like the public school system in 30 years, 40 years, if something doesn't change, it'll be the psych wards of the 1920s.
Yeah,
because everybody who's and you can structure words however you want to structure them, but people who perform normally, what we would consider normally, a lot of them are jumping ship and they're going to charter schools.
Sure.
So the public schools have to they can't turn anybody down, so they end up with more. It's crazy how on the spectrum so many kids are nowadays, and it really starts to turn into this, and we have this weird deal where it's kind of like, well, we're studying to a test, we're not teaching critical thinking.
Right, yes.
And that's why, to me, it's like if we don't start implementing some sort of mass therapy in schools, maybe there's a 30-minute or a 10-minute session, and you have, I don't care if you go hire 200 counselors. That way, every kid can get, 30 minutes a day, let's say, or an hour a week.
I love that, like mandatory therapy in school. But how about like meditation classes, or how about
That'd be great
effective communication? We're so worried about algebra. It's like, okay, what about how to balance a checkbook? What about some what about some skill, self-compassion? Yeah. Right? How about these things that can really
conversation?
Yeah, teach people how to be decent human beings when they are, they may come from a very difficult home situation, right? And so what are they doing? They're mimicking what they see at home, and then they're bringing that into school. Have kids bringing weapons into school. It's difficult. It's really hard.
Yeah, it's We're in a pickle, girlfriend.
We really are. You know, I have
Really
clients that, you know, their kids lock their doors, their kids slam their doors in their faces, their kids hit them. This is completely ineffective and unacceptable.
Now this is me being an idiot. Mm-hmm. I can't help but feel like that's what a good old ass whooping would fix.
Well, yeah. And so what we do is we teach people, I'm going to hit you to change your behavior. And then we grow up and say, you're not supposed to hit anybody.
Well, you know, and this is me being ignorant as well. Mm-hmm. So you're on one end of the spectrum. I'm on the, as far as knowledge goes, and I'm on the completely opposite end, you know. But at times it's almost like I feel as though we forget that we're still animals and we need to behave a certain way. And you know, I've have friends, I have family of people that I know where all of a sudden, you know, the kids get to this point where the hormones are kicking in, and it's the little lion testing the big lion, you know, and that goes unchecked because they don't want CPS to be, and I'm not saying to go whoop a kid's ass, but you know, there needs to be this, hey, you need to understand the pecking order in our household. Now, granted, this is assuming that there's a mother, father, and you know, the household is you know, what is it, a nuclear household, you know,
or some positive role models in the house, right?
And I think a lot of times, like I have friends of mine that do amazing work with their kids, and then I see others that struggle, you know, and I don't pay attention to their lives enough to go, oh, you need to be doing what so-and-so's doing, but that may work for them.
Right.
You know, I have a buddy of mine, and he will remain nameless. He'll hear the story. But, you know, it's funny because he talked about how his son was hitting puberty, teenager, 15, something like that. And was having those problems where he was just kind of like not interacting well with the rest of the family. He was snappy, not listening to his parents, and wanted to go see his girlfriend. And the mother had told him, hey, we're going to go eat as a family. When we get done, we'll take you to go see your girlfriend. And that didn't interest him. He was upset about it, and he made it known. So my buddy was watching, you know, from a distance, because he's got a little bit of a temper on him too, I guess. And they'd gone to go eat. The mom asked the son again, hey, you know, do you want to have anything to eat? And the kid said, I told you no. I want to go to my girlfriend's house. And my buddy grabbed him by the neck and the wrist, and he said, I took him out the front door, and I slammed him on the first car that I saw. And I told him, don't you ever talk to your mother that way. Took him home instead of his girlfriend's and did him exercise, manual labor. And it was literally pick these bricks, put them over there.
Right.
When you get done, bring them back over here.
Yeah.
And he said, we never had a problem again. But it was his way of letting the son know, we're your parents. We're doing what's best for you. We love you. But you can't be aggressive towards your mom.
Right.
You know, and I think that gets missed in some families. You know, like you said, doors get shut, kids stay in their room all day, they're on the internet. You know, hey, when I tell people, when I'm alone in my room, I'm watching porn or I'm taking a nap. You know, so I'm sure that's what's happening here. You know, and then that's another thing. You know, they started being exposed to sex that's not sex.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
That's what you're watching online. It's abuse. You know, most people don't live that way. You know, that those people are being paid and kind of acting. You know, it's not real life. But there's not that interaction, and I feel like a lot of times. And again, well, I'm not a father. We didn't have kids. But I feel like a lot of times people are kind of like, as long as we're not having a negative interaction right now, me and my child, I don't care what he's doing.
Right, yeah. I think that's a problem.
She's on the laptop. He's on the laptop. They're in the back room. I don't care, you know. And like you talked about earlier, you need to be more involved. You need to be a little bit nosy and know what's going on, you know, because you can prevent a behavior from, I guess, escalating.
Sure. You know? Yeah. And that situation that you talk about, I can't say whether it was right or wrong, right? That's not my place. That's not my family. But this is what we know about people, is that they lack emotional regulation, right? They say that the brain is not fully developed until they're 25. A kid is not. And so a kid that age is operating off of hormones and emotions, and and they're very egocentric, right? I want what I want.
That's what I consider the animal behavior.
Sure. Yeah. It's like, I want what I want, and I don't want to do this. And I have this this bend. I really want to go do this instead. And so then what does that look like? That looks like ineffective communication. It looks like lashing out. It looks like sarcasm. It looks like those sorts of things. And so then what Dad chose to do was to go and use something physical.
That's what I like.
Now, was that the most effective thing? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, because sometimes that kind of response can breed anger in this person. So when I don't do what my parents want to do, I get hit, right? Or and then that can breed negative core beliefs about somebody, that somebody might have about themselves, or they don't understand me. I don't know that young man said all of a sudden, like, oh, I can see, when you slammed me and you made me, oh, I totally get, like,
no, I don't think that's the case.
I think that he was probably angry and maybe felt misunderstood, and maybe having a conversation around that, right? And people say, oh, you're touchy-feely. I'm not a touchy-feely person. That's not who I am,
No.
right? But maybe we have a conversation about, hey, the way that you're acting is inappropriate and this is why.
Yeah. I think what the kid, I don't think it was the face on the hot car and the moving the bricks that probably helped de-escalate that kid's aggression, but it was the conversation afterwards that the father had with him.
Sure, yeah.
And that's one thing that
Could we have had that instead of all the other stuff in the middle, though? Right? Could we have maybe
earlier on,
responded to that kid in a different way, and maybe instead of, why does he have to be forced to have food, right? Maybe if you don't want to have food, your natural consequences are some of the best teachers in the world, right? We could just let kids have natural consequences. Well, you don't eat and you sit there quiet. Well, then we're going to ignore you and you're not going to have any food. Maybe. I don't have the answers, but we need to try maybe some different things with people besides always going to physical violence.
And I always, I'm a fan of the physicality at times. I think sometimes there's the hormone thing that you got to push through. Can you intercept that before it got to that point?
Maybe.
I believe so. But at the same time, I think discipline without that conversation is a
abuse.
negative. You've really if you're gonna. One thing that my dad did a lot of times growing up, when I was younger, it was different. I guess it was, hey, don't do this and this and that. I'm gonna spank you. This is why. As I got older, I think he got older and he got more tired, and it was like, just do what I told you because I told you to, And so that's how I grew up. And out of respect for my father and my parents, it was like, I don't need a reason. My dad told me to do something,
right,
and I'm going to do it,
right.
But I think we've gotten away from that. And so now it gets to the point where we're not attempting to intercept an issue before it becomes a larger issue, before it explodes, before it turns into having to slam a kid on the fucking car,
right.
Or having somebody shoot up the damn school,
right.
I feel like there's probably opportunities for people to see something and intercept that behavior before it escalates to a point of catastrophe.
Yeah, that's best case scenario. But and then again, there might be people that have been completely involved. We've been completely involved since day one. They're all these things, and my kids still went and did X, Y, and Z. But what is that? That doesn't keep us from trying, though. Yeah. We don't say, well, I've done everything and he still did that or she still did that. Well, no, we still need to keep trying. We still need to be involved.
And I think that's important for people to understand is you have to keep trying.
Yeah.
You have to keep trying. Whether it's going and seeing a therapist that you didn't get along with and now you have a negative outlook on it. No, you have to keep trying.
Right.
And it's similar to everything else. It's similar to being fat. You got to keep trying. If it's being on drugs or being on alcohol, or you've got to keep trying. And I think that's where when people lose hope. I'm a Christian too. I put a lot of faith and hope in God and a better life after life, right? And but I think that people. I heard a guy talking. I think it was on Rogan. It was a guru. And he was saying that people don't have a relationship with God anymore. And so they feel like they need to do everything now.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of having things to do in the afterlife.
Right.
So everything's now. I've got to be seen now. I've got to be on the internet now. I've got to have, this clout now. I've got to be recognized now. Everything's now, because nobody's living for an afterlife. And, hearing that, it kind of really makes you see that in the world around you at times. And it's just, I don't know, it's something that's a huge issue that I think we're experiencing now. in addition to all the crises that we're constantly in, if we don't make the effort to recognize things, or the effort to recognize things in ourselves that are wrong, or to recognize things in our loved ones, it's just going to progress to a point that it's a catastrophe.
Yeah. And what we have, I feel like the society we have today is there's so much pressure, right? It's like, if you don't work 80 hours a week, you're worthless, right? If you get 8 hours of sleep a night, you're lazy, right? If you're not killing yourself, then you are a terrible person. You're not hustling, right? And I think that's a very unhealthy way to look at things. If you have something that you want to do, you have a passion, right? And you're doing it and you feel great and good for you. And it is 80 hours a week, great. But I don't find that to be the case. But I feel, I find to be the case of people in Cubicleville, right? That are just like, I can't, I hate this. I don't want to be here. And I'm going to do this for the next 20 years because I have to pay for a house that I can't afford. I have to pay for vehicles that I don't need. I have to pay for all this crap that we keep buying, right? So I think that we are, we're putting ourselves into a corner that we don't need to.
Yeah.
When we can say, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to buy anything else. I'm going to buy a $3,000 car, or I'm going to go do painting and photography, or I'm going to do a podcast. This is what I want to do for my life's work, and I don't want to do anything else. We can do that if we can find a way to do that. But we keep thinking that we have to run the rat race, and we don't.
Yeah. Well, I think part of that also is images that we see online.
Yes.
We want to compete with the Joneses.
And that's a problem.
Yeah. And
the Joneses are broke, as Dave Ramsey says.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that it's like buying a computer, right? You go and you say, okay, well, what kind of computer do I want to buy? And they say, okay, well, I want the best one that you've got. I want top of the line, the fastest, most memory. I want in 6 months that thing's obsolete. So building your life and finding a career is kind of like buying a new computer. What do I need? What are my needs? Why I need this. I want to be able to do this. What computer do I need?
Right.
What job do I need? What lifestyle?
Right. People keep thinking they need these jobs that make ridiculous amounts of money. Well, not necessarily, because if you live in a 1,000 square foot house instead of a 35 square foot house, guess what? You don't have to make as much money.
Sure.
And so when you live in the 1,000 square foot house, then maybe you can go do what you want to do, which is, I really want to hike. I want to hike all the time. Great. Then stop buying a bunch of crap that requires you to be at work all the time. Limit your spending, limit all the stuff, and then you can go hike all the time.
Ugh, that's where I live. I always, it's funny because I tell people, I'm like, especially like younger folks that graduate high school, and like, what should I do? And I was telling them, those National Geographic shows?
Yeah.
The guy who's in the ocean filming the whales? Go be that guy.
Yes.
Because I took the path of least resistance, and I made some okay money. It's not great by any means, but it's afforded me a lifestyle that I can't afford not to afford anymore.
Yeah.
I can't afford to not make a certain amount of money.
Right.
If I did what I wanted to do, that's a severe pay cut. And,
Sure.
And maybe it's something that's worth doing at some point.
Yeah.
Because you sit there and you go, you almost have like these, I don't know, I'm going to say 3. Most people have 4 phases of life, right? And it's kind of like I'm in my 3rd.
Yes.
It's like, well, what do I want to do now?
Yeah.
I had my 0 to 20.
Yeah.
I had my 20 to 40, and now I'm in my mid 40s, and it's like, do I see myself sitting in a cubicle staring at a monitor?
Do you want to do that? Yeah. And if you don't want to do it, then you start with a plan. Like, how do I get out of this? And you work your plan and then get out of it. Because, what do you want people to say at your funeral about you, right? Like, when you're laying on your deathbed, do you want to say, I wish I would have? I wish I could have. Why? You can do that right now.
Yeah.
So if you imagine at your deathbed, whenever that, God willing, whenever that is, you want to say, wow, I did everything that I wanted to do. And I was authentic. I didn't settle. I mean, what a beautiful way to go out.
Yeah. And I think the people who I would jokingly say win at life are the people that get that. at the youngest.
Oh my gosh, if people could understand that they don't have to do what the norm is, right? And I feel like what the norm is I grow up, I go to college, go have a job, I get married, I have kids, they have grandkids, and then we all die, right? I mean, if that's what people's jam is, good, go for it, right? But there's a lot of people that we never wanted to have kids, never did, right? My life is, I think the reason I can do the job I do is because my life is very, very simple, right? There's my husband and there's 2 dogs.
Yeah.
And my husband, does what makes him happy. He's fully retired. He's very happy. Sometimes he does a lot and sometimes he does a little, and he's very happy at that. And I can travel and I can go and do we can do what we want to do, and it's a beautiful life.
Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of people get in line. We have this layout of what's next, and I'm a fan of what's next. I like that superstructure. You know?
Me too.
And we didn't have kids. And that's kind of one thing that's weird. I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day. I said, my life's really strange right now. Because growing up, I had this idea of what I was going to do.
Yep.
It's like I needed to get a career. I needed to do X, Y, and Z. That way we could start a family and have kids. And we were going to do exactly what you talked about.
Right.
That's what I've always wanted to do. I've always liked kids. I've always wanted to be around children. I've always wanted to have a big family. I wanted to go to teach T-ball, right?
Yeah.
And so I tell them, now that we're not going to have kids, I sit there and go, what am I going to do with myself for the next 20 years?
Right.
Because my plan went in a different direction. My plan was one thing that didn't take. So now it's like there's this empty canvas. And,
opportunity.
Well, you're right. It's opportunity. To me, it was kind of like this empty field where there was the edge of the earth and there's nothing beyond that. And slowly as I sit and I think about it, I'm like, okay, well, this is an opportunity to do anything.
Anything. It's kind of exciting.
And I wish, there's like I'm stuck in a cubicle, right?
Uh-huh.
There's a time in my life that I enjoyed that in the sense that I enjoyed the problem solving. I enjoyed, that aspect of the business and being able to do X, Y, and Z. And it felt good, right? I felt accomplished being able to problem solve. Now, I just burped really ugly. Now it's like, I don't really problem solve anymore. I've been doing it so long that
second nature.
It's second nature. I've even told my boss before. I'm like, dude, when I'm drawing piping systems, I'm like, it's literally a day off. It's a mental day off because I can do this stuff without even thinking about it. So when I have these days where I'm just heavy drawing piping systems, it's a mental day. Like I'm thinking about everything else under the sun, and that's kind of nice, right? You've put in all this time. You've been able to get to a certain point where you're good enough at your job that you can work that way. But at the same time, it's like I don't want to do this the next 20 years.
So here's the miracle question. It's the therapy question. The miracle question is this: if I could wave my magic wand that I have, and I could go ting, and tomorrow you could be doing whatever you wanted to be doing, what would it be?
I would ride a horse around a fence line on 200 acres all day long.
Okay. So I would ride horses. What else would you be doing?
You know what? And this is, I would say this. Nina's a school teacher. She's, I think what I lack in my life right now is that instant gratification of feeling as if you've impacted somebody else.
Yeah, so you want to help people.
Sure.
And so then what you do is you look at how could I help people? What could I do to help people? What's a profession I could get in or volunteering or whatever? And it sounds to me like, could I help? And you said teacher, so kids, you love kids, right? Kids and horses. Is there something I could do with kids and horses?
Listen to you, Elise.
Right? Right? And what we do is, what you do is then you build that dream out and then you figure out what are the steps to get to that. Because what I tell people all the time is, do you want to look up in 10 years and go, I just wasted 10 years in that cubicle and I'm pissed about it?
Yeah.
Well, you should be pissed at yourself because we can do something about that.
And that's slowly where I'm at right now. Like I said, there was a time where I was cool with it.
Sure.
Because I enjoyed it. And this sounds really dumb, but it felt at times when I was younger, because I was learning things at the same time, right? But I was problem solving, I was learning things, and I think as humans we need that.
Yeah.
We need to be able to learn new things and apply them and see them come to fruition.
Sure. Yeah.
And go, man, I did the steps.
Satisfaction.
And educating myself on something, having a problem in that field, and solving it because I educated myself on it. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Now I'm at the point where it's like, I'm not even thinking about this shit anymore. I'm just doing it.
I'm on autopilot.
Yes.
And so if you're autopiloting your life, are you really enjoying it? Are you authentic? Are you living?
Not necessarily.
Because we can be living and existing.
Yeah.
And so if you're living, that's a beautiful thing. But if you're existing, you're missing out.
Yeah. And I think I would say for the past handful of years, it's been more so of an existence. Now I will say the podcasting thing's been cool.
Yeah.
It's been fun. I really do enjoy it. But I'm like I told you earlier, I like being by myself. I love it.
Yeah.
But I still need those interactions.
Yep.
You know, my dad was a little league coach for years until he couldn't see anymore. He had to stop. Broke his heart when he had to stop. But that's what he loved to do. And it's so interesting to talk to people that are in their mid 40s or late 30s, and they're like, "Oh, your dad was my coach. I loved it. I had a great time."
That's neat.
You know, and it's funny because I sit there and I go, "I'm pushing paper all day."
Yeah.
You know, here was a man with a 4th grade education and, you know, broke all the time in a house that's run down, and he's got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids.
He
that
impacted people's
appreciate
lives.
Him. Yeah. And that's kind of, you know, that's something, that's where I go, man, I've been chasing $1. And
Well,
this guy was educating kids.
But here's the thing too. You have impacted people's lives by what you're doing as well. It's just you don't see it. You just don't see it. And what you like is that I can see, like what I do. When I can see when people get it, it's like the aha moment. It's like, wow, I never made that connection before. Oh, I see why I do that, and that I have the power to change that if I want to. That is, I love that. And that's what it sounds like. That's what you want.
Yeah, I think as human beings, when we can have that experience and get that aha moment. My sister, she's rough. But my nephews love going to her house. Aunt Bubba, you know, and because they're going to work on something, they're going to build something, they're going to make something.
Yes.
And she's putting them to work, but they're learning things. And it's funny because there's 2 in particular that love going there. Like even for spring break, you know, people are going to Six Flags or Fiesta Texas, or they want to go to Aunt Bubba's and they want to build things.
Isn't that great? That's so neat. Yeah.
So I think that's awesome.
Interactive. Yeah.
I think that's awesome.
Building skills.
That's something that I think people need to do more of. You know, I think we kind of get away with it. Technology makes life too easy.
Oh my gosh,
you know?
yeah, man. I grew up when there was no internet, there was no phones. That's how I grew up, right? And so to see the way things are now, it just, I really value that I didn't grow up with that, and I had to learn.
To answer the phone and find out who it was, right?
Right. Yes, I love that I have I know I read a lot of books. You know, I have imagination, or get outside, or connect with people. You know, that's why I feel like people without the internet can maybe connect with people a little bit better. Whereas today, everybody's online, and we don't have those social skills like we used to.
Yeah, I've got a nephew, and he'll know who he is, but. We had a conversation a long time ago because he's very, very well behaved, or from what we know, he's very respectful. And when you talk to him, his responses typically are yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. But there's no input.
Right.
You know, and I had a conversation with him one time when he was in high school, and I said, hey, you need to start working on your conversation skills. You need to be able, because people can tell when you're disinterested in a conversation with them. They can tell.
Yeah.
I said, when you go for a job interview, you need to be able to have a conversation with somebody and not just an interview.
Right.
You know, because you're going to sound robotic.
Right.
But so are the other 200 kids that came in for this job.
Sure.
You know, can you come in? Do you have the credentials? Can you present yourself well? Can you have a conversation that somebody can go, so the employer can go, I can work with this guy for the next 20 years.
Stand out. How do you stand out?
Yeah.
Right.
And it's being able to, nowadays, it's just being able to speak.
Right.
You know, and being able to be personable and have those conversations. And so that's key too. So. But anyway, all right, Elise, we've done an hour and 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So I've enjoyed my time with you.
Me too.
Tell everybody where they can find you. And I don't even know if you're taking clients right now. But.
No,
Okay.
But that goes up and down, right? I'm very full right now, but then, you know, in a month it could be I'm taking clients. So it's always best to check with me. So my business is called Argus Counseling and Guidance. Argus was my first German Shepherd.
Okay.
So Argus Counseling and Guidance, and I'm in Garden Ridge. My number is 210-997-7779. And
Okay.
so you can find me, if you look up Argus Counseling and Guidance, you can find me on the internet on Psychology Today. I have a website, you can find me.
Okay. And again, you're not taking patients right now, but that fluctuates.
Right, it does. You can always check with me, because here's the thing: if I'd rather hear from you, and then maybe I can connect you with somebody.
Okay.
So even if it's not me, it can be somebody else, and we can get you the help. We can find you somebody.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I love you, Alisa, and
Love
it's good
you
to
too.
see you again.
It's great to see you.
And thanks everybody for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Gabe Molina Podcast.